about you. This is who you are. We decided that we'd form the Sandy Ground Historical Society. We had the town included in the state national registers for historic places. We are a program site for the National Underground Railroad Network to Freedom. We've received the Mayor's Award for our contribution to culture and to history. We have been on CTV several times. We've been on Channel 1, we've been on Channel 2, we've been on Channel 7. We have some pieces that are in the New York Historical Society. They borrowed them from us when they set up their children's museum there. And we also have some pieces that are part of their ancestors' way. Staten Island Advance has given us incredible coverage in terms of our activities. And we see about 3,000 school kids a year. We go out to community groups, senior groups, and we make presentations on the history of Sandy Ground. So that I always say that those that don't know about us don't want to know it, because we're out there everywhere. And because we offer the quilt class to the ladies, we put this quilt exhibit up that talks about wares that people made of the church. Okay? And over here, every year the church has something that's called Family Day. And these are the families. Here's the church. These are some of the families that represented descendants of the original settlers. Did something with the waterways with the Noble Museum last night. But anyhow, the baykeepers came to us and they wanted to reseed all the beds again. And since we're probably the only living oyster-based community on Staten Island, they came to us, and this young man here, he went down and he put, they gave us an oyster basket with oysters in it, and he put it in the water down in Tottenville, and he went every week and he measured to see if the oysters were growing. The point was the waters clean enough for the oysters to grow? And sure enough, they did. So then they took us out on a boat out by the Statue of Liberty, and we threw the first group of oyster shells into the water. The question is, and this is the basket that we use to do that. Okay, that's an original oyster basket. And the thing is that yes, they did grow, but you still couldn't eat them. Still couldn't eat them. So I know that there's some activities going on now with the baykeepers and the harbor school, where they're going to want to see the beds again, and we'll be in touch with them, and we certainly will be willing. This is our brochure that tells about us, and this is the brochure on this exhibit. Now, as we go into the next room, is of course, and this exhibit is called Binding Ancestry, and it's quilts made by the people who participated in our quilt classes. Quilts were always a very important part of the Civil War, a part of the African American community. I don't know if you've ever been down to George Washington's home. Well, in a room about this size, they have living quarters for 3 families. Now, a bunk, top and bottom. And they use quilts, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the back. They use quilts not only for warmth, but they use it for privacy. And this is a tribute to our strawberry farmers. The first people to settle out here were the Harris brothers, and they had been buying property out here, and they came out and they found out that the soil was sandy, and that is where the name sandy ground comes from. Okay, so I always tell the children, if life deals you lemons, you make lemonade. Okay, they had sandy soil, they had to find a product that worked well in sandy soil, and that they did. And that product was strawberries. So they were said to have introduced the strawberry crop to Staten Island. And they were smart, those two brothers were smart. They took their own product to market, because there used to be boats that come around that would buy your product. They did away with the middleman, and they took the strawberries to market, and they became, fairly well off through that. They had they had lots of property out here, and other people began to move in. So the first ones were the strawberry farmers. Then the oystermen came, okay, and the community continued to grow. Bishop Forge, and you see we have this diagram here of the Bishop Forge, okay. He made tools for the oyster industry, and he made the transition to the new people coming in because he made iron fences for the new houses that were going up. This over here is the quilt that our quilt class made in honor of the Bishop Forge. He operated the last privately held forge in the city of New York, and that forge was destroyed by fire. Again, fire destroyed the last privately held blacksmith shop in the city of New York. So what can we say? So Bishop came to us and asked us, did we want to buy his property? And we told him, sure. And we went to the then Senator Markey, who was also a history buff, and he gave us the down payment for the Bishop Forge property, and it's right down the street, 1448 Woodrow Road. Okay. And one day we hope it'll be the site of our state-of-the-art museum. We bought this house here as our headquarters and museum from a gentleman who didn't want to sell to the developer. And again, we got a grant and we were able to pay this property off. So we do own it all outright. Over here is and there's more information on Bishop, who he is, his forge, and so on and so forth. Of people shucking oysters, okay? And someone made a quilt square out of that, and so we left that also to hang in this quilt exhibit that we have. Out here, we have a series of quilts made by some of the ladies in our quilt classes. And this is my family quilt, okay? This picture over here is hanging up at the New York Historical Society in their Ancestors Way. And at the top is John Pedro, who was a whaling captain. And he came over to the United States from Cape Verde, the island off of Africa, and he came over here and he married Eliza Weeks from Weeksville, and they came out here and settled. So that's my family tree. Here, when I was telling you about the enslaved people, this quilt we took down and had it evaluated by a quilt historian, and this quilt, he says, is made by enslaved people. The material is feed bags. You know, when they got the feed in for the animals, he would, the people would take it, put it together. This is doubled. And then they didn't have the sewing machines that we have now. And so they knotted them. So you'll see little knots all at different points. And that's what held the quilt. This is another quilt family, and Tarkadon and Meeks, and she put her family tree in the middle. She is Native American, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
That's her ancestry, and the other part comes from a Staten Island family by the name of Meeks, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
And then she also made this quilt over here for her son. He was a firefighter, Richard Meeks. This is one of the families that are still coming out to worship church out here. And these are 5 generations of women from that family. This is my husband's family. And I did that really for his niece and thought it would be nice to add it into our exhibit here. This one is the Herring family, who were cousins of mine. So you'll see this is Pop Pedro again, and he's over there in the middle. And so you see some repeat pictures. And this was a first-time quilter. So she put the picture of a whole family here and then put the family names. So there's different ways to do it. How we have extended that is that when the older children come out, we go ahead and we get a picture of the children. We want them to begin to think of themselves and their heritage. And so we start them by saying, okay, you're going to start your family quilt and you're going to be in the middle of it. So we take the pictures, we transfer them to cloth. That's how these pictures got transferred to cloth. And we have them decorated. Now the plan was for them to go home, take it back, take it home, and then start their own family tree. But what has happened is that when they go back to school, the school is making a class picture out of those squares. So there's 2 things that we do here. The younger ones, we give them and I'll talk a little bit more about, we give them a doorknob hanger. And on the doorknob hanger is an abolitionist. And we tell them to decorate that, and that becomes, that's the Underground Railroad system. For the older children, 4th and 5th grade, we have them begin their family tree. This, again, it was done by somebody in our class, and so you can see it's an art, it can be an art form, or it can be a story quilt. And which her idea was, this is done by Julie Lewis, was that everyone is beautiful in their own, but they're all different. So you see, this is beautiful, that's beautiful, this, and that's, and we're all stars. That was her thought in putting this quilt together. This is a quilt, again, that was done by the class, and it's African American history in that it shows various stages of President Obama when his inaugural, his family, and so on and so forth. Very important part of African American history. And what this is a map of the structures that are still left in the community. We got pictures of the houses, and you'll see that all of these houses and buildings are still left in the community. This is the museum, and we have here's the church over here, and these other houses that are scattered throughout everything else that is there. And over here is a picture of my grandfather and his mother. And how do we find it? My daughter was particularly attached to Pop Pedro, who was in fact the town mayor and lived to be 106 years old with all of his faculties. And she said, Grandpa, what do you got in that closet? He said, oh, just some stuff. She said, could I see it? And finally, by her asking him over and over again, he allowed her to go in. And she found these pictures of him when he was 21 and that is his, that's his mother. So what we do through this, we tell youngsters, ask people in your family, what was it like when you were growing up? Who was your mother? Who was your father, in case they don't know, you know? And to help them begin to think about tracing back their own heritage back to Africa, I guess, which is where we all came from. Started from there. I know about the real Eve. And this here is a bill of sale, 14-year-old girl, that was sold right here on Staten Island as part of a larger estate. Now this room is a very special room. Was the exhibit that we had up before the quilt exhibit, okay? And this exhibit is now on loan. One of our problems in terms of, the thing is that we want this information out to the young people, and we weren't able to get it out to the high school students. They didn't have the, they didn't have one teacher, you see, because one teacher brings the class out here. They have several teachers and several classes over the course of the day, and so we really were not able to reach them like we wanted to. And so the Staten Island colleges, Wagner, St. John's, and the College of Staten Island, have a program called 30,000 Degrees for Sustainability. And the idea is to get the young high school students interested in going to college, okay, and putting it in their mind early. And so we were able to partner with St. John's University, where we took the original of this exhibit down, and we gave it to, we lent it to St. John's, and it's up there now, and it should be up, I think, until the end of March. I go up there, and I am able to speak to them up there at St. John's, and they have this whole exhibit, this right here, they have up in St. John's. Each one is a quilt square. These are copies of it because I use that when I travel. Okay. But each one is a quilt square made by one of our quilters, and there's a story behind each one. The one piece that they don't have is this. They do have a picture of it. It's this piece right here. This piece is a write-up about Louis Napoleon, who lived part of his life in Sandy Ground, and we had him included in the state and national registers of, in the National Underground Railroad Network to Freedom. And this is a quilt square of his house. Now, each one of these are quilt squares. Amazing thing about Louis Napoleon is that, you know, the National Anti-Slavery Society, U.S. Anti-Slavery Society, noticed him. He was he worked down by the piers in Brooklyn. And so they said, "Oh, that young man, who is he?" So they hired him ostensibly as a janitor, but he was really an Underground Railroad agent. Wow. Whenever those ships came into New York, he knew everybody on the dock. He wasn't where they came from. And he was able to, if somebody came in, there was a gentleman who had escaped from Georgia and came into New York, and the captain found him. So the captain was holding him and was going to take him back to Georgia. But you know, Louis Napoleon talks to everybody, so he went down and filed a writ of habeas corpus. And so the captain had to present this man, and once he did, the court said, "You're free. You're in New York. We don't have slavery in New York anymore, and you're governed by the New York law." And the same thing for another group. These people bought some people that they came to New York, and they were going to take them out west as being part of slavery. And again, Louis Napoleon found out about it and went to court. This was called the Lemon case. And that case went all the way to the Supreme Court of New York. And they said, they're in New York, they have a right to freedom. And so those people were also set free. Plus he moved about 3,000 people from New York up to Syracuse and to Albany. And from there, they were going to move them over to Canada because they passed the Fugitive Slave Act, which meant that these bounty hunters could go into any place and pick you up. So he was very important. And then what really convinced them was that we have his death certificate. And on his death certificate, they list as his occupation Underground Railroad agent. And this, again, over here we have the symbols of supposedly the symbols of the Underground Railroad. This one is supposed to represent the bear's paws. If you saw a bear's paw, it's supposedly people hung these quilts out for people going by to see, people who knew the Underground Railroad. And this is the flying geese. And they would turn it, fold it in a way that pointed north. Because remember, they ain't going with a GPS. They're not going with a compass. There's also one that's supposed to be follow the drinking gorge. These are all parts of the symbols of the Underground Railroad that people use to help to find their way. We have a collection, the Gibbons Gums collection, and these are some of the masks. And this piece, again, something that was made by one of our quilters, and again, as a work of art. And we like to show that also, because depending on what mood you're in, you could have that, or you could have this.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's the back piece. You can make a quilt that it could be plain on the back, or you could have something else so that you could turn it around. And of course, like I said, we've been on Channel 7, we've been on Channel 2. We have our own film called The Sandygram that we show to the children here. And we think they leave there. We know that, and we emphasize that Staten Island offered a safe place for African Americans to come and to build a community, okay? And that place was right out here in the South Shore of Staten Island. And given the opportunity, that's what they did. 180 families, 2 churches, 2 schools, their own businesses. It's a very positive story about African American freedmen's lives, and a positive story about Staten Island. And we're very glad to have the opportunity to tell it. We've expanded some. We've had the Harlem Children's Zone children out. We've had a couple of schools out from Queens, a couple of schools out from Brooklyn. So the word is beginning to really spread around, you know. Yes. And we're really pleased to have Staten Island Cable out to do a piece on us. You see, we celebrate Black History Month all year round. So we don't have a specific program for Black History Month because we celebrate it all year round. This is about you. This is who you are.